I can hear something calling. It's calling me every day. If taking a chance is a crime, then I've got hell to pay. I've been walking the streets in my mind, trying to find a new day. Keep on searching until I will find, until I find a new way. I'm gonna say something, I hope you don't mind. It's time to rearrange. I walk round in circles, I'm going nowhere. It's time to make a change.
Ben, how you doing? Thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Charles, how you doing?
Doing well. Been excited to have you on. You have a lot going on, and I think that your message will really, really resonate with a lot of people. So I'm looking forward to diving in. Before that, though, would you mind giving a brief introduction of yourself for the audience?
Yeah, absolutely. Ben Monnette, um, spent 16 years in the special operations community as a Green Beret. I've deployed 8 times to the Middle East, anywhere from tactical operations to strategic operations, operating out of the embassy. And throughout that time, I've had some struggles. And now I've found ways to live healthier. And my next journey as I transition out of the military is to help other individuals and tell them that they're not alone, and there's options out there to get help to turn your life around and to fix those unhealthy behaviors.
Yeah, I think it's commendable what you're doing. And like I said, I do think someone like you opening up about your own struggles, it's really going to resonate with a lot of people who are struggling and unfortunately aren't saying anything or seeking the help they need. So, Ben, you mentioned you served 16 years and you were a Green Beret. I think I read somewhere you had 8 deployments to the Middle East. Could you share how, some of those challenges that you faced during those deployments, how they shaped your approach to resilience and leadership, both in the military and now on your recovery journey?
Yeah, early on, right? So 2013 was my first deployment, and it was a good warm up deployment. It wasn't long, it wasn't in a combat zone, and coming back from there, uh, I thought that was going to be the norm. Returning back into my everyday life, coming back to family, becoming a dad, becoming a father, and that wasn't the case. And then so I immediately gravitated towards my work, and immediately, that was my priority, was my work. And as I continue to focus on that, of course, I climbed the ladder. I accomplished, difficult tasks. I went to important schools that were going to, form the leader I am today. Uh, but all while doing that, me personally and my family suffered, and that was a habit that I continued to move forward. I wasn't able to transition back from a deployment to, being that loving father and husband. And as I continue to deploy and continue to train and continue as not be as present, I became to identify or create unhealthy habits that were probably there in the, early on in my life. And but they were really exposed and accelerated in a military setting. So as I continue to deploy, I and come back, the deployments were that was my job. I thrived in that leadership position. I thrived in those settings. I thrive in a lot of special operations. Soldiers thrive in chaos. That's what we're trained to do, and we excel in that. And then when there's no chaos and when it's calm, I created my own chaos, and that was from being uncomfortable. And the way I knew to be comfortable was in chaos. So for that, my unhealthy behavior was to drink and isolate. And early on in my life, I think that, reflecting back, there was times in my life that, I could have gotten help, or if I really did a deep dive internal, assessment of where I was going and what my habits were becoming, I would have been able to identify some ways to change that. Um, Coupled with, that the brain is a very powerful tool. And when I was excelling in my military career, but drinking, I was able to fool myself that I didn't have a problem because I was continuing to thrive in another environment. And that lasted for years. That lasted for, 14 and a half years of my military career was, a combination of drinking and, oh, I'm going to stop, I'm going to deploy, I'm going to, come back, and I'm going to, isolate and cope with these, negative self beliefs, things that happened overseas, um, in an unhealthy way. And that was my routine, and my routine was, and I fell in that, and I continued to uh, convince myself it wasn't an issue. And that was the biggest thing that I see reflecting back, is there was a problem all along, but that ability to deny and convince myself that there wasn't, because I refocused on my professional life and not my personal life. Uh, it just continued to spiral until it couldn't anymore, and there was a rock bottom where I needed to get the help that I deserved.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think for a lot of people, we always hear that saying, the calm before the storm. But I think what people don't really understand is sometimes it's the calm is the storm, and they don't know how to negotiate it. And I think it's becoming more and more of an issue. And like I said, I'm really happy to see more guys, more men really speaking out about it. So, Ben, you mentioned about your struggles with alcohol, your negative, self beliefs during your military career. What point did you realize those coping mechanisms were becoming destructive? And then what was really the catalyst? Was there a specific moment that led you to seek help?
Yeah, man, that moment, I was in denial. That moment was right in front of me for the longest time. Uh, so I can't pinpoint. It's hard to pinpoint that exact moment that I knew, wow, I have a problem. Uh, it was there, and I believe that it was there prior to me joining the military, right? And I think that that coping mechanism was there. It just, again, it was accelerated in the military because socially it's acceptable, and I would argue that socially, regardless if you're in the military or not, alcohol is socially acceptable. And for some, great. Like if some people can have a few drinks here and there, then that's great. And I have no concerns about that. But when I always talk about addiction, there's either there's different parts of the people, right? You have one person who can have that, drink every once in a while and put it down, and then there's a person who can't, right? And that was me. But there's one person that the third type is what I believe is almost every single individual, is they either A, are that person who can't put it down, or B, have a coworker, friend, a loved one who is struggling with it. And my goal here is to provide resources, to provide that extra incentive to say, hey, let's stand up and let's raise our hand and let's get help. And for me, that was in 2021, end of 21. And I raised my hand and I said, hey, I need help. So I went to a facility that was a veteran, and I say veteran loosely, facility. And it was a month long. And that was not what I needed. Although by sheer determination to stay alcohol free for 18 months. And I phrase it that way because I thought that if I take out alcohol, life's going to be great. Everything's going to change. Life's going to slow down. my anxiety, my depression, my suicidal ideations is going to go away. And that was just the easy button, you know, stop drinking alcohol, everything's going to be fine. And that was not the case. So during those 18 months, I significantly struggled mentally. Although I was sober, I didn't have the tools. I didn't have the community. I didn't have the understanding and the self reflection that I have now of what's really going on or how to tackle life, because life is not going to ever slow down for anyone. So fast forward 18 months, and I had some issues with my past marriage, and it was some things that happened where I just couldn't handle anymore. And I decided, it was my decision, right? My decision was to, instead of seeking help or being vocal about my struggles to people or being vulnerable, I decided to isolate. And I ended up relapsing for 7 days. On that fifth day, I actually tried to kill myself drinking. And that was the rock bottom. I could not stop. And that is when I knew it was a very powerful addiction. But that is when I fully understood how powerful it was for me, right? I can't speak of other individuals, but for me, it is extremely powerful, and it, to the point where it destroys my life. And then after leaving the hospital, I was able to find a program called Treehouse Recovery. And that program, at the end of the day, changed my life. And it wasn't like, it's not a typical program. It's very unique. It utilizes physical fitness, knowledge, and community to heal the brain. And that is what I needed. I needed the physical fitness, and I needed the understanding of, and this is the knowledge aspect of it, is I needed the knowledge of what was going on in my brain when I was working out. Right? What chemicals were being released? How did I feel after working out? That's the knowledge that I speak. What is happening in my brain in this workout moment? How am I reacting to that? Do I have tools to take a step back and look at the situation, and instead of react to that situation, take a step back and try to understand it? And it's crazy that this world where we have knowledge at our fingertips, the internet, cell phones, everywhere is our knowledge. And we don't have knowledge about our own selves. We don't have knowledge about our what's going on in our brain. So when I was at Treehouse Recovery and learning about, my limbic state of mind, which for veterans and active duty, that's our lifeline, right? That's the fight or flight mode or mentality. That's what saved my life and many of my teammates' lives, many times. But it also is a detriment to me back home. So understanding how to, combat that, have those tools to really strengthen my prefrontal cortex, the reasoning, part of my brain. And once I came back, and it was 3 months, right? And 3 months was a sweet spot for me. I believe that a month of treatment is not nowhere near enough to unpack addiction with PTS, with negative self-talk, negative, view of yourself. It's just not enough time. And we're not doing the individuals justice by, 30, 45 days. And that's my opinion. But 3 months was perfect for me. I come back, and I didn't come back just mentally fit. I came back physically fit. And that was something that I was always physically fit, in special operations, but now I had that knowledge of why am I working out? Not just to be able to lift heavy things and walk long distances, but what was going on in my brain. And until this day, I view, exercise as that. I don't view exercise as, oh, I'm going to be able to lift more weights or look better with my shirt off or lose weight or all these things. I view exercise as that is going to be something that I need to release those healthy chemicals in my brain. That dopamine that I was searching in a negative way, I've now found a way, in a positive way, to release that and to give me what I needed, right? And after that, that was the when I came back, I knew that, I started transitioning out of the military, and I knew that my next calling, this next journey, was to help others. I've have again a unique experience with addiction. I've tried a couple times, different places, and I've tried, cold turkey and all these ways that people have done it. And I sat there and thought to myself, how can I help other people? How can I expose these resources to other people? And it doesn't have to be, a veteran. It doesn't have to be active duty. Any individual who's struggling, with addiction. And I state the word addiction with an understanding that addiction is of many different things. Our society views addiction as alcohol and drugs. However, I think addiction expands vastly past those two substances. You have gambling, eating addictions, you have porn addiction, sex addiction. All these other addictions that if you approach it with a mindset of how can I learn about this? How can I learn what's going on in my brain? And then lastly, how can I create a community that's going to A, hold me accountable, and B, support me when I need to be supported? The community aspect is just, that was probably what saved me, is having a community where I can talk to and be held accountable. But also it's my responsibility to be open and honest. You can't have a community without you being willing to be open and honest about how you're feeling or what your thoughts are.
Yeah, you mentioned something during that I was curious about, because I wanted to get into the whole Treehouse Recovery and what you do now. Along your journey, you mentioned how you thought just it was the alcohol, giving up alcohol, you would make everything right. And now you mentioned about understanding what's going on in your brain. Do you experience now in what you do for a lot of people where that must be kind of a shock when you give up that thing that you think's causing all your issues, but then your problems are still there? How do you walk people through that? And how did you yourself get through that part of it to understand that there was more to it than just the alcohol or the addiction?
Yeah, absolutely. Easy answer would be having the community, having the supportive environment. A more in-depth answer is, failing, right? I accepted the fact that I can fail. There's one thing I can't fail at, right? Is ever in my entire life is drinking or picking up a bottle. I could never do that in the rest of my life, and I'm perfectly content and happy with that. But if I can fail, I can lose my temper. I can, overreact. I can have negative thoughts about myself. And what I early on, and when I talked about, taking out alcohol, I was like, well, now I still think, I have negative thoughts about myself. Now I'm still losing my temper. I stub my toe or I'm in a traffic jam and I'm all of a sudden irate, and then that's where it's like, oh, well, that's the negative, the spiral downwards. Right. But I'm okay with that. I'm okay with the fact, and this is with the community and learning that it's okay to fail. It's okay to fail. And I always say fail once, fail again, fail better. If you're learning from failure, you're growing. Very few, if any, individuals, are in their comfortable zone and they're excelling and they're growing. Right. And so once I truly believed that I accepted failure on anything other than what I just mentioned, um, that took the pressure off, the extra added stress for me, and that alleviated. It was almost like that the analogy of, that cinder block is lifted off your shoulders. Well, that's what it was. Is once I came to do that. Now, how do you do that? That is difficult. It's through trial and error. It was through, you know, being vulnerable, asking, how are you doing this? How are you going through life? When things happen, how do you handle stress? And then actively listening and understanding other people's coping skills, right? Like, we don't have to emulate exactly what other people are doing, but I sure as heck can grab, from 10 individuals what they're doing and create something that works well for me.
Mm. Yeah, that's, I think we can learn from everyone. I think that's another great part that you just mentioned about really being able to pull pieces from different areas. And I mean, I personally find myself with the podcast learning all the time from all you guys that I end up speaking to. It's really been a great addition to my life to be able to, present this for people to learn, but also myself. Selfishly, I think I'm doing it as much for me as for anybody else. So it really does
Yeah,
help. Um,
absolutely, it does.
yeah. So Ben, I did as far as some of the issues that you had, because I think for most people listening that may not be in the military or a veteran or have served, but I think there's other ways that this happens in their life. You mentioned about that whole mentality of what's next. I think whether it's military, corporate world, whatever it is, how did that type of mindset of what's next cause you additional stress or, just the pressures of that, always needing the next thing? How do you
Yeah.
help people manage that?
So I climbed the mountain in my career, and then once I was up that top on the top of the mountain, my instant thought was, what's next? I never sat in and gave myself that gratitude, that grace of like, I just accomplished something difficult, right? And I learned the hard way, right? And I wasn't able to sit there and, after Ranger School or after combat dive school or after these various other schools, it was immediate after graduation. What can I do next? And I discredited all the effort, all the time, and determination that I had to accomplish that goal. And that continued to, you know, fester, or, create this mentality that nothing was ever good enough. And I continue to use that for motivation. And it was the wrong way to use that, right? Because that continued to, confirm that I was never good enough for me, right? And through that, uh, I wanted to create my own, executive consulting or company. And the reason why I wanted to do that was, I know the power of community, and this consulting is a one-on-one, where I sit down with individuals and talk through them. Either, if you want to accomplish something in your professional setting or personal setting, your personal lives, uh, and I am able to understand that individual and not allow that individual to sit there and be like, yeah, I just did this, right? I just got married, or I just had, my second child, or I just made this great sale. Um, but then I'm, focusing on something else. Like, whoa, slow down. That's not, you know, dismiss what we've just accomplished, because I've done that. I've always dismissed that and continue to move to the next objective. And that doesn't breed self-confidence. It doesn't breed self-worth. So a part of my, mentor consulting business is to really, promote individuals to really understand what they've done, how much hard work you've had to do, and if it's the next objective, right? That's my next step to my end state or my goal. How do we get there? Well, we're going to use what we've done in the past, right? And we're going to use that together, and we're going to strategize and create ways to accomplish, your final goal. I say many times and this is, I believe this, and I say this often to myself, is not every day is a Super Bowl. And I felt that in my military career is every day I had to knock it out of the park. Right? I wasn't going to accept a 2-yard run or a base hit. Had to be a grand slam or a Hail Mary. And that doesn't breed, that adds extra stress, that adds extra resentment towards yourself when you don't accomplish those things. So what I've learned, allow me to instill that to you, right? So you don't have to go through that pain and suffering like I do. And then additionally is I look at problems differently. I mean, at the end of the day, being, in a combat zone, conducting tactical operations, or at an embassy, with a strategic lens to a problem set, I approach the problems differently. And oftentimes it's your problem or your goal. You're very invested in it. And it's hard to take a step outward and look at it at a macro level. And when there's dialogue between two individuals at that macro level, change can happen, growth can happen, and then ultimately that relates into accomplishing what that person wants. That's me understanding what I was and reflecting how I viewed obstacles or goals, and trying to help others, not make the same steps, mistakes, thoughts, in which we all know thoughts turn into beliefs, and then beliefs turn into actions. So if we can have that dialogue, we can change that and to create a greater outcome.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think in general, we are a results driven society, for better or worse. But I also think that we have, and we hear it all the time now, about participation trophies. Where does that balance come in, especially when you're working with really high level professionals, Ben?
Yeah.
Where does that balance come in when, how do you help them understand that there is success within the failure? Because I think a lot of the corporate, in corporate culture, that's really hard to accept. And if you're not getting the results, you may be, put out the pasture, so to speak. So how do you really help make it so they can balance it in a way that they can still get there, but really understand that they may be failing, but they're failing forward and there's still successes to be learned from?
Yeah, absolutely. And at Resilience Recon, that's what I do is, there's a lot of pressure in the corporate world to succeed, right? And I time and time again articulate this and communicate this to individuals is you wouldn't be at the level that you're at, wherever you're at, if you hadn't had successes in the past, if you don't have that resilience, that determination, that strength. So, but oftentimes that's the next mountain. We discount that. We don't look at those. We focus on what we don't have or what we need instead of what we've accomplished. So being able to have that dialogue and to remind those individuals, listen, you've done this at a different capacity, at a different level. You've done this to make it where you're at, right? And let's use what you've learned. Let's learn and also use what you failed at to create another approach, a different, unconventional approach to this. And let's look at it again. We're at a current state and a future state. How do we get to our future state? We're not going to make that massive leap to get to that future state or that end goal that we want to make. So where can we start looking at it and strategizing those small little victories that we can identify That's going to give you motivation, determination. It's going to give you confidence to now when you approach it, you approach that ultimate goal, you already have that ball is already moving downhill. And I believe that there's so many different ways that we can get that ball moving downhill and not focus on that one end state. So say you want to hit this, make the NFL, right? And you really, that's my goal. Or you want to, get this contract, or you want to make this sale, and that is your own goal. Well, let's work someplace else in your life that's going to bleed into that. But let's not focus just on that, right? There's a clear line, and it needs to be a balance of your personal and your professional. And it's easy to get sucked in and focus on your professional, right? I spoke about that. That was all I did with my professional life, and my personal life suffered. And inversely, if I would have only focused on my personal life, I don't think I'd be sitting in front of you as a Green Beret. So having that balance, being able to work on my personal life, knowing that that's going to add benefit and value to my professional life, or vice versa. And if you're at that stage where you're like, man, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know what I want to accomplish, I don't think I have it, my self-confidence isn't there. It's like, okay, well, we can start there. If you have that determination or that willingness to say, I want to get here, that's all you need. And it's the same thing that I say to individuals seeking, treatment for substance abuse. If you're willing, that's it. That's what you need right now. If you're willing to do what it takes, if you're willing to continue to learn from your failures, then you can accomplish what you want to accomplish. And oftentimes, when people really believe that and understand that and live their life like that, they're going to surprise themselves, their loved ones, because of how powerful that can become.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really eloquent way to put it, because I think I especially in the corporate world, I think people it's either success or failure, and there's no gray area. And I really believe there is a gray area that they can be learning from. Uh, the one other thing I wanted to ask you about that as you were speaking, this came to me. Do you think that sometimes we're our own worst enemy when you talk about from the perspective of someone, the goal, it's about, maybe it's just you have to put the work in, right? But is there ever the flip side of that where the goal is just, we hear that phrase, sky's the limit, right? But in reality, there is a limit. How do you, as a coach, really help a person see that maybe what they're shooting for is too high, too fast?
Yeah, we're a society of instant gratification, right? We are a society that we want results now. Uh, and it's really finding those you are creating results, right? If you're not at the top of the mountain, but you're walking up, hey, that's results, right? But oftentimes we are focused so heavily on that that prize, that top of the, whatever that is, our goal, our finalized goal, or to make it. And we lose sight of everything as we're going through that or going up along that journey. And that's where the community aspect is where having that dialogue, like, listen, yes, we are on the same page. We are going to get to that goal, but we're not going to lose sight of what you're doing now, right? Because at the end of the day, there are going to be, monumental steps forward, but also there are going to be small steps forward. Those small steps forward are just as valuable as those monumental steps. And then there's going to be some steps backwards. Okay, that's fine. That's great. How can we learn? How can we adjust, pick ourselves back up, and move forward? But that is, yes, you are invested in your own goals, and having that humility and willingness to be like, All right, let's talk about it. Let's look at it at a different optic, and then oftentimes what I've seen is individuals will sit there and be like, yeah, you're right. Okay. I didn't look at it like that. It's like because you were talking to someone else, because we're so, narrowly focused on our lives and our goals, that when we don't open up the aperture to a broader lens. And that's where I come into play. And I encourage that. We're going to get to that end goal. Whatever you want. I'm not going to tell you, I don't tell people, oh, well, this is how I did it. You should do it. Or this is what your goal should be. No, that's not for me to decide. The way I do is through supportive, through, you know, methodically detailing what you really want. And if you don't know what you want, let's find it. Everyone has their purpose. Everyone has their ultimate goal. And it's difficult. Change is hard, and nothing worth worth the time and effort it's just going to be difficult to accomplish if you're not willing to change and approach it differently.
Yeah, I think you're really it's solid advice, and I'm really hoping that people listening, it really resonates with them. It reminded me of something when you were talking about it. Someone had told me a while back that two steps backward can sometimes equal four steps forward. Uh, and I think that's really, really true. Um, I've been wanting to ask you the whole time we've been speaking, the shirt, Objective Secure. You can talk a little
Yeah,
about that.
yeah. Nick Lavery, he's a good friend of mine. I've deployed with him a couple times. Served with him at Fifth Special Forces Group for years. And he was one of the critical individuals that when I returned back from Treehouse and was passionate about helping individuals, he was critical part of it. And he told me, he's like, listen, like you have a powerful story, and for you to accomplish what you've accomplished, and uh, now willing to pay it forward, willing to be vulnerable, right? Vulnerability breeds encouragement, and being able to be vulnerable and open with what I struggled with, um, entices or encourages other people to get the help they deserve, or to approach a objective differently. And sitting down with Nick, he started a virtual community, and it's just a powerful tool. You know, social media, technology, cell phones can be so detrimental, but if used in the right way, it can be very valuable and powerful. And through his community, it's called the Forge at Team Machine, is a massive amount of information at your fingertips. We have financial coaches, we have, fitness coaches, we have cognitive, improvement, coaches, we have, nurse practitioners, we have pharmacists. I am the forum mediator for mental health and recovery. So I focus a lot on, hey, listen, these are the things that I use, the biopsych social, methodology of you have to have community, right? And then you have to have the emotional intelligence, coupled with the education, and then the physical intelligence. So all those are, and I promote that as, even if you're not struggling with addiction, and you implement some of these, recipes of healthy living that I have, you are going to improve in whatever way you want. And if one-on-one coaching isn't your thing, or you don't want to do that, you want to have a more larger ability to pick and choose who you want to talk to, then I urge you to check out the Forge. It's powerful, and uh, Nick has really created a community where, you can now be, specific on which angle or what part of your life you want to improve. Uh, so and yeah, Nick's a great guy, very powerful individual. I mean, what he's gone through, his book's amazing. Um, and, I have the, the, the blessing and honor to speak alongside him, to continue to work how I feel I can help, alongside what he's doing, um, and with all the other coaches that are part of the Forge.
Yeah, you guys are building something really incredible with that, Ben. I have to tell you, I had the pleasure of speaking to Nick late last year, right around Thanksgiving, and just the power. I found myself a few times during it. I forgot that I was hosting a podcast. It was, yeah, he is a powerful, powerful speaker. And to your credit, I was thinking about it as you were speaking, having spoken to Nick before. I like kind of it's a different, right? It's a little different, right? You may not come across as loud as Nick, and I mean that in a good way, but I think your way will resonate just as powerfully with just as many people. And I think it's a real solid mix that he's doing and building over there. And I'm glad that you are a part of that. We talked a little bit before we got on. You have some things coming up. Would you mind letting everybody know where
Yeah,
where they
absolutely.
can see you, find you, check you out, check some of your upcoming engagements out?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm on LinkedIn, Ben Monnette, on LinkedIn, Instagram, Ben underscore MO777. You can check out my consulting business, resiliencerecon.com. October 5th, I'll be up in uh, Wilmington, Delaware, speaking with alongside two amazing individuals, Nick Lavery and Joey Bowen, with the Consequence of Habit speaker series, and that I'm looking forward to that. That is an amazing. I was lucky to be on JT Frank's podcast, The Consequence of Habit, and it's. I look forward to being able to speak of, the consequences of my habit, but also look at the positive outcomes of my new habits. So look forward to that. October 19th, I'll be in Lakeland Park, New York, talking and or speaking and participating in a 5, 10, 15 mile ruck for Reps for Responders. Reps for Responders, another, you know, strong organization. They're really advocating for mental health and law enforcement, first responders, nurses, volunteers, military, active and veteran. Um, and it's getting the word out, being able to create a community. That Reps for Responders Ruck event, Ruck the River, it also can be done virtually. So you can have let's embrace technology. And that's, if you can't make it, you can still participate and still be a part of a greater cause.
Yeah, fantastic. And I'm looking forward. I think I will be down in Wilmington to get to witness you and Nick and Joey speak live. I actually had the pleasure of having Joey on the show last year also. And again, amazing, amazing individual with Fuel Hunt. Haven't met JT personally yet, but through social media and what he's doing with the Consequence of Habit is really, really fantastic. Ben, I usually end by having the guests talk about what they have coming up. I
Yeah.
changed it a little bit for this as you were talking because I thought a way to end this in a more powerful way would be this for the person that may be watching this right now that's in a bad state. How would you address them directly right now about getting the help they need?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, your trauma, your struggles are important to you because it affected you. Um, However, there are individuals out there who have struggled similar to what you're going through right now, and they have turned their lives around. If you have that hope, that desire to change a habit, to change a thought process, to change a routine. There's help out there. Do your research, utilize, talk to people. And lastly, you're not alone. There are, just like what we've talked about these many different organizations, they're out there. They're out there to help you, but it takes you. It takes the initial step to raise your hand, the initial step to say, I have a problem. I don't like where this is going. I want change. And then after that, you listen and you allow people to help you. But you're not alone. You may feel that way, but there's many people out there that are willing to do anything they can, myself included, to get you the help that you deserve.
Yeah, Ben, thank you so much, man. Really powerful way to end that. And for anybody who may be struggling, I hope they hear that, because I can tell you, just in the amount of time we've been together and the call we had last week, Ben, trust me, is extremely sincere in what he does, and he's been through it. So take advantage of people like Ben, of Nick, Joey, all guys like that. So Ben, thank you again. Hopefully we'll be able to catch up in October. I definitely like to
Yeah,
meet you
absolutely.
in person.
Yeah, look forward to it. And thank you very much.
Thanks everyone for watching.
This
Take
has
care.
been
Bye.
the Bare Essentials. Thanks for listening. And remember, never hibernate on your goals.